UCLA is making other teams in the Big Ten nervous.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one sports podcast network, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm here with Golden State Valkyries analyst Sophia Jones. My name is Kalia Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. And if you're cool, you are rooting for the Patriots when it comes to the Super Bowl and your final time to watch some NFL football. So tap in with FanDuel. In terms of what we are going to go over today, it's never too early to start your brackets, am I right? It's January. It's basically the end of January. You have February and March. Now's the time to really lock in with that. So we're going to go over some new rules that have been implemented on what teams can kind of qualify to make the bubble. We'll explain that more. Some upsets in the Big 12. But first of all, let's go over some Big 10 and Big 12 matchups that are happening tonight because there is a really good slate of games. Illinois is going up against UCLA today, who is currently ranked second in the AP poll. They are hosting UCLA. UCLA, I could assume, has been here since Sunday. They played Northwestern on Sunday, so they are braving the cold with us potentially because I guess it doesn't make a bunch of sense to have to go back, especially with some weather delays that have been happening. But I say that they are making some other teams in the Big Ten nervous because the Michigan head coach, Kim Barnes-Arico, had gone on Sarah Spain's podcast saying that UCLA is just looking like an absolute gauntlet when you have both of the Betts sisters on the same team this season, when you have 6'5", 6'7". She talked about their guard play. She said they are a scary team within the conference. Mind you, Michigan is having an absolute great run of their own. So you know that they are putting a little bit of fear in their opponents in this conference. But today is going to be a fun one, Sophia.
Definitely. And I would have to agree with Coach. UCLA is looking like the team to beat within the Big Ten. They only have one loss on the season, which was to Texas. And that was pretty much way back in late November. And in that game as well, Lauren Betts, she injured her shoulder she had an arm injury a little bit. And for the rest, she was just getting her strength back a little bit. That strength is 1,000% back. And so she's been playing 100%. But the resume that UCLA has put together is really, really strong. And quite frankly, I think incomparable to some of these other teams in the Big Ten. They had a really brutal non-conference schedule. They were scheduling a bunch of ranked teams. I feel like we talked about them so much during the non-conference because they were constantly scheduling big opponents and playing in these high-profile matchups. And then in the Big Ten, they have just been extremely dominant. Same thing with ranked opponents, just running through them.
This is one of the most veteran teams in college basketball, and we've seen them be able to get so close to winning each season. I mean, the past couple of seasons, they're making a minimum of a Sweet 16 run, obviously had a very close shot at winning it all just this past year. But I think we've talked about it before. If there is a time for them to win a national championship, this is the season. They are scary in Big Ten play, but also you can't outdo experience, especially against some of these teams that they have been going up against. As you mentioned, they're 9-0 in conference, 10-0 in their last 10 games. They've been on a roll since losing to Texas and have not looked back. And again, that was a non-conference game. So you kind of get that out of your system early. And they've been smooth sailing ever since. They're averaging 91 points a game while holding teams to 53 points per game. So they have an absolute elite offense, but defensively, they're doing really well too, because again, going up against any Big Ten opponent is incredibly difficult. We've seen this league have up to 9 teams in the AP polls and within the top 25, but they are just such a surgical team when it comes to ball movement, especially. They work so well with each other. And I think that comes back to all those veterans that they have on the team right now. They're averaging 22 assists per game, which is the best in the Big Ten. It's really hard to outpace them and their efficiency.
100%. UCLA just wears teams down. You look at the flow of a game and it might be close for a couple minutes, but then all of a sudden, because UCLA just makes so many winning plays on both ends of the floor defensively, they're very physical. They lock you up in the paint, have some great athletes to stay with you. And then offensively, they just turn around and wear you down from there, again, with their physicality, with their pace, if they are turning you over. So UCLA, surgical is a great way to put it. It's one of those teams that you look at the score and maybe they're up by 5, and then 2 minutes later, they could be up by 20.
Yeah, and they're a team that loves to kind of make you nervous at the beginning of the game and make you feel like you're in it. And then boom, they just have these late game pushes. And then that's when you see these 20-point differentials. So that should be a fun one. Illinois might have a little bit of an advantage playing at home. So we will see. Another good one today, number 25, Washington going up against number 16, Maryland. The Terrapins have gone 12-2 at home, and they rank second in the Big Ten in rebounding, 38 rebounds per game, which is going to be very significant in this one. Washington has been on a good roll themselves. We've seen them come in and out of kind of those bottom 20s when it comes to the AP polls, but they're 15-1 when winning by double digits. So they've been able to create a defensive identity for themselves, which is going to be big going up against a really strong Maryland team.
Yeah, defense is going to be Washington's call to fame against Maryland. It's been their call to fame in the majority of the wins they've garnered this season, specifically the ranked ones. But they can catch Maryland at a little bit of a vulnerable time right now. They're coming off of a loss to Iowa in overtime, as well as a 30-point blowout loss to UCLA. They beat USC, but then they also lost to Ohio State. So this was a team that was looking extremely strong at the beginning of the year. They were looking like one of the favorites in the Big Ten, but just with a lot of injuries, they've taken a little bit of a slide. And that's why I say that Washington can be opportunistic in the current state that Maryland is and try to go in there, stifle them with their defense and get a win.
Basically what you said, Sophia, is just kind of kick them while they're down. They already lost to UCLA and Iowa. So just like, while you're in this vulnerable position, let's just absolutely outdo ourselves. I'm just kidding. But another good one to watch today, Iowa State, who's obviously been having their own struggles through this season, but have gotten back in the win column going up against number 21 Texas Tech, who started off the season really strong. Now they're facing 2 conference losses. Not that necessarily means that they're falling off, but these are confidence boosting wins potentially for either team. Texas Tech trying to get back into the win column and kind of cement themselves in the Big 12. But Iowa State really having to prove themselves at this point in this season. This is the only time that these 2 teams will match up against each other this year. And Iowa State needs to get back to beating other ranked opponents. When we get into a little bit later what these like bubble teams are going to look like, if they have to fight for a bid and only rely on winning their conference, which you had mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, Sophia, it's going to be difficult. So this is going to be a significant game for Iowa State to cement themselves within the Big 12 too.
Yeah, like we said, we'll get into the metrics a little bit more later, but the fact is right now, Texas Tech outranks Iowa State in multiple ways. And so getting this win will be very resume boosting. It would also knock Texas Tech down the standings and help Iowa State, who is currently 4-5 in Big 12, start to work their way back up a little bit. You're about the midway point through the conference, so it's time to start making things move and shake. Iowa State, they were in that brutal downhill slide where they lost a couple games in a row. But with the return of Ariana Jackson, she's been a starter, 3-point shooter, can space the floor. That's been key in their last 2 wins. They still do not have Addie Brown, which has been affecting them, especially because she's a great front court tandem to Audie Crooks. But we'll see if Iowa State can continue to pull together some wins, but not going to be easy against Texas Tech, who was sitting pretty at the top of the Big 12 for a while. They're the only undefeated team. There was even a point in the AP poll, they're one of the only undefeated teams. They've shown that they can take a couple losses also, so this game can definitely be up in the air.
Some fun ones tonight, but coming up after this, there were some upsets in the Big 12 yesterday, and should Utah be in the top 25, we will get into it.
I carry a lot of responsibility in my household. If something happened to me, there would be serious consequences. We have a mortgage, we got tuition, we got everyday bills. Those aren't going anywhere if something happens to me. And I know that's an overwhelming feeling, but I'm taking steps to protect my family by getting life insurance through Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast, easy, and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. And as of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LocdownNBA. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LocdownNBA. That's ethos.com/LocdownNBA. Ethos.com/LocdownNBA. Application times and rates may vary.
Sorry, we're removing Sophia for a second. Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club, where you can get access to ad-free audio feed for Locked On Women's Basketball, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. So go to lockedonwomensbasketball.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Okay, Sophia's back. So that we can recap yesterday's games, we're going to go over West Virginia and Utah first, because that was a pretty good one. Utah defeats 22nd ranked West Virginia 71-64 in Salt Lake City. Utah has been having really great performances at home. We talked about another significant win that they had this season against TCU. I think they're one of those other teams that we have talked about where they're a little bit more of a under the radar team, but they've had some significant wins so far this season, and especially being able to go up against some of the top ranked opponents within their own conference. They're now 15-6 overall and sit at 6-3 in Big 12 play. They were led by their freshman Sneed, who had 15 points, 5 of 6 from the field, and then Reese Ross, who came in and had her fourth double-double of the season with 12 points and 10 rebounds.
Yeah, like you said, Utah definitely one of those teams that contribute evidence as to why some of these power conferences are so deep. They're getting that win against West Virginia, one of those teams that has kind of an in and out of the AP poll, but still very cemented in their status as a team that you want to beat and get the win over. So Utah owning home is definitely huge. And as someone that's been in Salt Lake City before, they do have a little bit of elevation. And so I'm just going to throw that in there as to a reason why they could be so successful there owning home floor. As someone that played in the Mountain West Conference, I was at like 7,000 plus feet. And let me tell you, elevation is not to be played with when you are an away team. So they're protecting home. They protected home floor against West Virginia. Like you said, some really key contributors, but Utah just really set the tone early. They owned the lead and just maintained that through the night. They hit a ton of three-pointers, and just controlling the rebounding game as well was really huge, and getting a lot of second chance points helped to boost them in that win.
The Utes, I love that too. The Utah Utes shot 54% from the field. They held West Virginia to shooting 41%. They went 55% from behind the arc. So you said knocking down a bunch of threes. They were 10 of 18, and they held West Virginia to just 16% from three. They only shot 12, and they were only 2 of 12. They won from the free throw line as well. Utah had 17 bench points, but they also had 16 assists on 27 made baskets. So you talk about another team that's moving the ball well and seems to be just really in unison with each other. I think at home, especially, that is how Utah has been able to get some of these ranked wins under their belt.
Definitely. And West Virginia, they kept it a close game throughout. It never really got too out of control, but another key thing for the Utes was they got some good contributions off the bench. 17 points in total, led by LA Sneed. So she was huge. She had 15 coming off the bench, just adding more contributions to a pretty well-rounded group. Like you said, whenever you see some great ball movement, the assists leading to field goals, that is an indication of depth usually.
Another big one in Texas. We love everything's bigger in Texas. Number 14, Baylor going up against Houston. They won it 82-66 in Waco, Texas. They are extending their win streak to 8 right now. And they were lifted, if you will, by Dariana Little Page Buggs. Her name is such a tongue twister for me sometimes. Dariana Little Page Buggs. She led all scorers with 25 points. She was 10 for 11 from the floor, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. And she kind of really set the tone early for Baylor. She has been one of those players that had a lot of eyes on her going into the season, and I think she's kind of had her up and down waves. But another player that has been consistent for Baylor is Talia Scott, who had 14 points in this one. But a lot of contributors across the board when it comes to Baylor.
Yeah, and I think the key word being multiple contributors is really big for Baylor. For a while, it felt like they relied extremely heavily on Talia Scott to generate a lot of their offense. And then she got hurt in the Texas game, had to sit out a couple matchups. And I think during that period, Baylor kind of filled in those other roles, and people helped to round out what they know that they need to do to kind of boost their team. But ever since Talia Scott has been back from that injury, Baylor has looked really, really strong. And specifically for Dariana Little Page Buggs, she has really taken a form in the conference season. Her 25 points is the most that she scored in conference. And she's been a major contributor, not only in points, but also rebounding. She's actually averaging on the season 10.9 points and 10.9 rebounds. I find it crazy that those numbers are exact. And she's 6'1". She's listed as a forward, but I consider her more to be a little bit more of just a big guard. And so for her to be so dominant in multiple ways, I think is another reason why we're seeing Baylor's success and why they're at the top of the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, they remain one of the stronger teams in the conference, improving to 12-3 overall, 8-1 in conference play. So some good ones yesterday, some great ones to watch tonight. But coming up after this, we're going to talk a little bit about bracketology and what we can kind of set you up with early on before we hit March.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest football game of the year. Like Kalia said, it will be the Patriots against the Seahawks. So I don't know when the last time they played in a Super Bowl together is, but if it was like 2016, there's been a recent thing where 2026 is the new 2016. So I just find that very interesting. But whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game that everyone has been waiting for in the football season. So it is right in my backyard here in the Bay Area. If you are going and you're there with FanDuel trying to make some bets, know that it's in Santa Clara, not San Francisco. It's about an hour drive away from the city. So if you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. And let me tell you about guesswork, because I was under the impression the other day, stressed myself out, that I needed to get everything in order. I just learned the difference between a W-2 and a 1099. Yeah. So TurboTax is definitely something that I can definitely utilize, because if I'm just figuring this out now, it doesn't bode too well for doing the rest of my taxes. But for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today.
As you guys can see, Sophia and I have women's basketball down. We got that. We're doing well. When it comes to the other adult things, I think sometimes it's clear to tell that I think you're a little bit younger than me, Sophia, but we're basically the same age, 23, 24. We're still new to all of these things. You know what I mean? So stick with us. But what you should do is rely on TurboTax, not us, to help you get your taxes done this upcoming year. Getting into some bracketology. So the NCAA has added another metric-based criteria for selection process this season, and it is wins above bubble, which calculates how many more or fewer wins a team has compared to what an average bubble team would average against the same schedule. Stick with me. The net is the basis for determining opponent strength, and the bubble team is based on a team ranked 45th in the net. It's a way for the committee to empirically see if a team is better or worse than a standard bubble team. The men's selection committee has been doing this since last season. So we're going to see how much it would factor into the women's selections for this season. So obviously we know if you win your conference and everything, you are going to the tournament. That part is accomplished. But when we're thinking of some of those bubble teams on who has had enough significant wins to still make the tournament, but also some teams that maybe are on bubble consideration, but if you put them up against the same schedule, who would be more likely to win in those games is basically the new added criteria that they are going to try to include to, keep these games competitive. Obviously, some of those first round games are going to be blowouts no matter what. But to my understanding, I think they're trying to make these games as competitive as possible early on, because everybody loves the Cinderella stories when it comes to March Madness. So it's worked for the men's tournament so far from what I've seen last year. So I'm curious to see how significant this could impact some of the teams that can get into the women's tournament this year.
Yeah, and I think just with the NCAA implementing this new metric, because there are just so many teams to keep track of within the landscape of college basketball, there are different regional groups, I think you can say, that pay attention to more squads than others. And so, of course, they're pushing their team they think they deserve to be in. But it's hard for some of these committees to keep track of each and every single one and be completely objective. So by adding another analytic, you remove a little bit more of that subjectivity from the discussion. And so with the wins above bubble, it does not factor in margin of wins or losses or a team's efficiency. It only measures the quality of your resume based on the results. So it's a results based and goes beyond strength of schedule to show how a team actually did against that schedule. And each game's result is assigned to a value between 1 and -1. And then that cumulative total determines a team's ranking. So again, just trying to put more numbers and metrics on some of these teams so that there's the least number of feelings hurt, because I feel like there are always a handful of groups that feel like they should have made the tournament, whether it's for A, B, and C. But like I said, it is difficult for some of these committees to watch and follow and stay updated on each and every single basketball team in the United States. And so this kind of helps mitigate that.
Yeah. And when we're thinking of just conferences right now, obviously some teams that feel like they should or should not make it. But when we're thinking of the reality of which conferences are going to have the most teams that are going to qualify for the tournament, essentially, obviously the SEC right now has 10 teams ranked in the top 25. They will be the most dominant in March Madness. Then the next one would likely be the Big 10, the Big 12, and you'll see some ACC schools trickle their way in there as well. So yeah, very curious to see what that could do for the women's tournament this year, which their selection Sunday is set for March 15th. And the Final Four games are played the Final Four is in Arizona this year, so that will be fun. Hopefully everybody can get out there and stay warm, but should be a fun one. Very curious to see who can be some of those sneaky teams, like maybe a Utah or something that could come in and make the tournament, which they will like anyway, but you don't know.
Yeah, right now they are on the bracketology, but it's another one of those things that also puts a lot of emphasis on teams' strength of non-conference schedule as well. So for example, I cover a lot of West Coast Conference, and I think about the preseason number 1 was Oregon State, but the preseason number 2 was Gonzaga. Both teams, and usually the WCC on the women's side is a 1-bid league. However, if you look at Gonzaga's schedule and what they did in non-conference, does it measure up? And these are just kind of the questions that this new metric tries to ask and implement, but it does punish teams that don't win their conference and don't have a very strong non-conference season just a little bit.
Yeah, just glad we're not on the selection process, because that sounds like a lot to cover. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today on Locked On Women's Basketball. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Women's Basketball so you get all of our latest episodes. You can find us on Instagram. I'm Kalia Butler _. Sophia is Sophia Jones, 3 S's too. If you never want to miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Go to Locked On Women's Basketball ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to LockedOnWomen'sBasketball.com, LockedOnWomen'sBasketball.supercast.com to join the club.